Colleen. She is a stylist and she is taking the industry by storm, just like us petite ladies are doing. She's another petite woman, and I'm so excited that we're finally meeting. So, if you wanted to further introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. First and foremost, I am honored. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, and then I moved to Arizona. Fashion stylist, and some people call me CQ. I go by Colleen, also. That's my actual name. So, just a little bit about me.
Amazing. So, something that I feel like, especially a lot of people in the fashion industry, that's most of my audience. They obviously want to get into fashion and know a little bit more about it. I feel like styling is always that little niche kind of thing that so many people don't know actually how to even get into it. So, how did you start? Like, what was your path?
I always forget about this portion of my story. So I think it's helpful to explain it starting here. Back when I was in college, my undergrad, I actually was working in women's retail. So I worked for some stores that maybe some of you are familiar with, such as BB back in the day. I worked at White House Black Market. I then worked at Ann Taylor. So I worked a lot primarily in women's business fashion, and I was just a sales associate. So a lot of us, when we think of sales associates, we maybe don't think of stylists or professional stylists, but really that is the root of where it all started for me from a young age professional standpoint. Then when I started really getting more into fashion, something that I'm really passionate about is thrifting. So I started thrifting back in 2018, and I started working with Goodwill here in Arizona. They were like, hey, you've been thrifting a lot. Like, you're taking all these awesome pictures on Instagram. Have you ever thought about doing a styling video? And I'm like, I'm not a stylist. That's the first thing I said. I said, I'm not a stylist. I just style myself. I don't know anything about explaining how to style something. They're like, we're going to try it out because we think you'd be good at it. So that's where I began. I started doing styling videos from there. I took off. I did pretty much all of the seasons. I did summer, fall, Christmas. I also did like the holidays, like Valentine's Day. I did all the fun, how to style yourself for different events, all through Goodwill. Then timing, is of essence at all times, as you know. But then I was like, I started in January 2020, really getting interested in the other side of the business, because when I met you, I was actually a petite model. That's where I started. I'm 5'0". I am such an advocate for petite women. Like, I am such an advocate for women in this industry that are petite. And that's how I started following you and getting to know you. Then in March of 2020, I was like, I want to transition away from the modeling and I want to be on the other side. So that's where I started my styling business, Style by CQ, and it took off from there. So that's the beginning of how I got started.
That's amazing. So, you were tagging Goodwill. Is that how they see people? I always say Instagram is such a powerful tool and people don't even realize it. That is how I started modeling. I got a casting through Instagram and then things just kind of took off from there. And I always say to people, you don't understand, like, just tagging someone can literally change, and you don't know who sees your stuff. It just kind of snowballs into all this different stuff that you could have never imagined. A lot of people wonder, do you have to go to school to do styling? What's your take on that?
My take is no. I think that being a professional stylist, being in fashion, you don't necessarily have to go to school. Now, I have a business and nutrition degree. I have an undergrad in business and nutrition. So I think that having a business degree definitely helped me, especially on promoting my business. I think many people in fashion in the industry that are creatives and they just want to create and they don't want to ask for money. They don't want to be a business person and they don't want to promote. And that's what hiring out is for. But I luckily am both. I love being a creative, but I'm also a business person at the end of the day. So I had no trouble promoting myself, putting myself out there. Being in fashion, I think that it's great to go to school and learn, but really learning on your own and doing research on your own is always very powerful, even if you didn't necessarily go to school for fashion specifically. But having some type of business background, I think definitely helped me. And having that degree behind my belt, I think did help me accelerate me a little bit more just with working with clientels and things along those lines.
I agree. I think a lot of people don't realize how important the business aspect, and that's where a lot of people could even fail.
Yeah.
Go to fashion school right now, and we had to take a business class, and that's where a lot of people go wrong because you're thinking all the creative stuff, but you don't think about the money, which is the big backbone.
Right.
A business. So that's amazing. I agree, and I think I'm even going to finish my business degree after fashion school. So what would you suggest people do now if they want to start? Let's say they're a teenager. What do you think their beginning steps would be to get into styling?
Something that impacted me the most is working on other people, styling other people. I think it's great to start out as styling yourself, but you can style yourself all day long. I think working as a stylist, you learn in the industry that it's definitely a different level when you start styling other people. I feel like there are levels to it. And as a teenager, you can definitely do that just with your friends, right? Just with your friends, having fun, especially on TikTok and Instagram. There's so many things you can do with it and making videos and just having fun with the trends. I think styling other people is where it would be a really good place to start, because that's going to be where you find the foundation of working with people on a fashion level and having that camaraderie with an individual, because maybe something that you thought would look best once they have it on, maybe it just doesn't go with them, or they don't enjoy it on their body. These are things you have to think about as a fashion stylist, because they do matter, especially if you are working, for example, a runway show. You want to make sure they perform on the runway. And if they're not fully confident in that look, or something's uncomfortable on their skin or the material, they're not going to perform at their highest capacity on the runway as a model. So things to definitely do in the beginning are working with other people. I highly suggest. And then second, generic, I know, just get started. Do not care. And I can preach this all day. This will be a whole nother interview, but you cannot care what other people think. You have to just dive in. It's going to speak to somebody. Your vision is going to speak to somebody. And there is no rules in fashion. There is no rules. Whatever you speak to, someone's going to be attached and come and compel to that. But you just have to start. You just have to start. And that's the scariest part.
I agree. So how do you get to know your clients? What types of questions do you ask them when you're styling? What types of things are you looking for?
Typically, what I ask first and foremost is, what is the occasion? So I'm mostly a personal stylist. So I do work one-on-one with a lot of my clients. And so first and foremost, I'm asking, what is the occasion of why I'm styling you? Is it a special event? Is it a birthday? Is it I've done a lot of like maternity shoots. What is the occasion? Because once I can understand the occasion, it does create a certain essence on the type of experience the client wants from the photo shoot itself. Second, one of the things I ask, are there any garments that you don't feel comfortable wearing? If you're a woman, do you feel comfortable exposing your chest or having a mini skirt on? Do you not? Tell me these things, because I never would want to put my client in something they feel uncomfortable in, or they don't feel confident. It goes back to that feeling confident in the garment or in the look. And then third, what are your favorite colors? What do you feel the most powerful in, as wearing an outfit? Are there any colors you don't like wearing? And really, there's a whole, you probably know this from school, there's so much science behind what colors look good on different skin tones, what works with certain, there's so much behind it. And so asking those questions, maybe the client doesn't necessarily know why I'm asking these questions, but they are very beneficial, because the outcome is going to be amazing and stellar if I understand these questions.
A lot of people think that this stuff is easy. They're like, oh, you just throw some. No, that's not
right.
At all. What has been your favorite experience so far styling? What's like a key moment?
I'm going to have to do two because they're so different. Top two would be, first, from a personal photo shoot standpoint, I would say the maternity shoot that I've done, where I've executed their vision board. And I do ask for vision boards if they have them available. Their vision board exactly to what they wanted. This couple, just their whole entire vibe and essence is just so amazing. And they wanted two very different looks in their photo shoot. And so I think that was one of my most exciting and fulfilling photo shoots, because really it's so beautiful to see pregnant women just in all their glory, just feeling beautiful in their skin. Because there's a lot of things about, I've never been pregnant myself, but from everyone I know, there's a lot of not so beautiful sides of pregnancy. So giving women that side of pregnancy, just if it's for that one photo shoot, just where they feel so beautiful. And I think that's really important. So that was definitely one of my most fulfilling photo shoots. And then my second top one is my first runway show, because you have to think about it. I started my business in a pandemic. So runway shows stopped, as you know, everything got canceled. So a lot of my first historic quote unquote runway shows were not real runway. They were, 6 feet apart, they were for obviously to protect everyone. But when I first rushing on stage, okay, I need to throw this on. That was my first feeling. Okay, I just did a runway show. And as you know very well. And so that was definitely one of my top experiences so far, as well as the stylist. And I've done 5 shows since then.
Let's talk about shows a little bit. So I think we can both chime in on this a bit, but it's just so hectic backstage. There's so much going on. How do you stay composed? How do you keep everyone calm, and how do you keep models calm? Because, sometimes people are still getting their hair and makeup done and they're like, we got to get you going. Let's go. So how do you deal with that?
So first and foremost, all of the models are looking to me to see how I react to things. And I think that goes back to being a leader. I try to stay as calm as possible in the chaos, because if I'm not calm, then my models aren't calm. So I try to stay and remain as calm as possible. But the way that I do that is really just having trust in my team. And obviously bigger shows are different, but if I have the ability to hire my own team versus, MUA, like hair and glam, if I have that opportunity, I have to trust in my team that they're going to get the job done and they're going to get the job done right. And then just being that leader, if a model has a concern, or if something's not working, or if somebody on my glam squad, like MUA or hairstylist, something's not working, expressing that to me, figuring it out, and keep it moving. There are certain situations in runway where you just have to make very quick decisions, and you have to make sure that your models also are like physically okay, because there has been a show where I live in Arizona and most people think of it as desert, which is true. And in August, it's around 110 degrees. And so there was a show where I had models in mink coats and it was outside. Okay. So I had water, Gatorade, snacks. I wanted to make sure nobody passed out or fainted. And so these are things I think from my modeling background help me, because I'm seeing both sides of the picture. I want to make sure my models are taken care of and nobody is in a bad state physically, so that when they're on the runway, they feel their best selves and they can walk and feel fierce. And, I think that's something that sets me apart, is I care a lot about the well-being of the models and making sure that everyone remains calm. But I think the way I do that is just reminding myself that if I'm not calm, no one's going to be. So I have to remain calm in situations that could be very chaotic because of that.
Models definitely appreciate when our designers and stylists take care of us, because I'm sure you've experienced, but it's not always the case, right? I worked for 16 hours straight, and let me tell you, did not get the food and water that I definitely needed. And it was not, you want to feel good walking on the runway, not that you just are exhausted. We definitely appreciate that as models when we're taken care of as well. So we both feel great and comfortable. Back to portfolio type of stuff. What does your portfolio look like for this type of job? I'm not a stylist, so I'm not really too sure of how you would send your work out to people. How do, let's go into that a little bit more.
So it's really important to have a portfolio. And I think as a creative, you are very hard on yourself. Maybe a look that I did a year ago, I would never do a look like that now, because I've grown and more experience, but it is creative work nonetheless. And that's why I say you need to get started. A lot of the portfolio work that I do, people describe as high fashion. I do a lot of furs. I do a lot of unique vintage blazers. I do a lot of both women and men. I definitely worked with a lot of male models this year. And again, any gender, honestly, it doesn't matter to me. It just matters your attitude and your confidence. I don't care nonetheless of anything else. So I think a lot of what people hire me for is their portfolio for as models. Like they want to gain a different edge in their portfolio so that they can get seen by certain agencies and get signed to certain agencies as well. So that's a lot of what I do. I work very heavily with the model community here in Arizona to build portfolios for them. And that's why I get hired for a lot of the time. Also, women in business is a huge clientele that I have, because naturally they want to look fierce. It doesn't matter the industry, right? It could be business, but it also could be law. You're going to style differently depending on the type of business or direction that you're going in. But a majority of my clients are models that are trying to build a portfolio. I think honestly, runway and portfolio work is definitely where my niche is, because I continuously have those clients that come and hire me for the services like that.
For the people who want to start out, if they're not really working with anyone yet, do you suggest they have family members themselves, maybe friends, that they just would take photos of? How would they go about that if they're not really working right now?
I would say definitely family members, friends. I have talked about this in other interviews, and it's not an unpopular opinion, but sometimes it's not your friends. Sometimes it's strangers that are going to support you, or just having that one creative friend that actually will take time to take pictures of you. Or that's how I started out, right? So I didn't have anyone besides one girlfriend at the time who supported me, was my ride or die. She always used to take pictures with me. But other than that, I didn't have really any friends that got it. And I think as a creative, you need to be around people that get it. It doesn't have to be all the time, but you need to be around people that get it, not the how many more? And they're taking, because we've all been there and we've all had that feeling. So try to be around people that don't make you feel that way. And whether that is a family member or it's just a mutual friend or even like an acquaintance. I know we talked about this earlier, but Instagram's a great way to network too. Just seeing around your area or even TikTok, around your area of like who you can potentially meet up with. Obviously be safe. Obviously I want to preface that, please be safe, but it's okay to make new connections and to build connections in a different community that you may not have. But I'd say starting out, if you have like one or two people, that's all you need, maybe even just one to support you. That's really all you need. Strangers sometimes can be the best clients. I've said that before. It's okay to not have your friends all fully get it out right away. And I totally emphasize on that.
How long, like, let's say you're styling someone, how long does that process take? Are you working all the time? Because I think a lot of people think that fashion design, because I'm going to school for fashion design. So I think that they just think that it's so easy. Like we just draw something up and there we go. So how long does this take? Because I'm assuming it takes a while to come up with these concepts. So what does your work schedule look like?
It definitely depends on how many looks it is. That's what I always say off the bat, like when I'm talking to a potential client, how many looks are you looking to do? Because that will depend on how long it's going to take me and what type of look are you looking to achieve, because then that's also going to come into play. To put it this way, preface like shows maybe months in advance, vision wise. There'd be nights where there's outfits laid all across my floor, you know what I mean? And sometimes those outfits don't even make it to the final draw. But I've always been a type of stylist that has more than they need. And then, okay, these are my best looks out of the amount that I have. Something else that people get really fascinated by with me is, again, I'm a thrifter. Most of my styling is secondhand fashion. And so I will find a piece from a thrift store and then I'll be pairing pieces together from the past. And they'll never know that wasn't a regular suit. No, I found that in 4 different stores. And so that takes time. And that's when it comes to experience and knowing what stores have what. And that's something I now charge for because it is my time and my experience that I've learned how to thrift like that and thrift quickly. And so that's what takes the most time, is driving to those areas or searching online if I'm trying to find something specific online for a client. Because I think the highest misconception, and I'm not saying this to offend anyone, but I think the highest misconception as a stylist or a designer is we're Mary Poppins. Like it just comes out of our purse. Like, hey, do you have this look you can give me tomorrow? No, I don't. It takes time. And then that's not including, jewelry. And everything that I have jewelry wise is morally high fashion. That's what I combine. So a lot of it's thrifted with the high fashion jewelry. And so if you want us to perform our best way when it comes to the looks, at least I would say 3 to 4 week minimum, depending. I can pull a look together day of if I need to, because that's what you have to do sometimes in professional settings. I don't like to. And then there's also situations where it's like, hey, we have the shoot that we don't know what model sizes we're going to have. We don't know what models are going to be there. Would you be interested in being a part of the shoot? And that gets tricky as well, because then you just have to pull with a variety of sizes, pull together looks you haven't used, and just wing it. And so that's where some of the experience comes into play. When I first started as a stylist, I got very nervous doing that. I was like, no, I have to plan everything out. I have to make sure this look goes with this model, because we go into your portfolio. We see, what do you already have in your portfolio? What colors do you often wear? Like, we're thinking of a lot in advance, and that's what takes the time. We're thinking of your portfolio, what do you already have, which you probably need a new fresh look of. And then I actually also work with the MUAs and hairstylists. So when I'm doing a show, I'm creating mood boards for both hair and makeup to coincide with the looks. So that's time as well, creating the mood boards. So yeah, I don't just throw the looks together. That's through experience. And that's why it's important that I said from the beginning to start working with other people other than yourself. Because some of the things you'll deal with as a stylist on your own and just styling yourself, you won't understand until you work with somebody.
What does your creative process look like? Because I think it's different for everyone, but how do you come up with, these outfits? How do you come up with these looks? What do you pick first, if that makes sense? Because I know some people start off with the pants, some people start off with the top. What goes on when you do this?
It usually is steered towards one piece or like one inspiration. And it's usually something that I find out thrifting. So the difference that a lot of people tend to get confused, which I know as a stylist, I don't create the garments. I just use clothes and I pair looks together. I made that sound so simple, but you get what I'm saying. Versus a designer, they're actually taking garment pieces, they're sewing things together, they're creating custom looks. I do to create custom looks, but I don't really sew in the process. If anything, I'm folding or manipulating the item to make it look different, right? So the reason I mention that is because I'm usually going off of inspo of some kind. So I always create themes around my looks. And that's something other people don't think about as a stylist, because as a designer, you have collections, right? So most of the time, the collections, they kind of go together, they kind of coincide. There is similarities in the colors, so there's definitely things that are similar. So as a stylist, we don't really need to do that unless we want to. So I tend to do that just off of the first garment I see. So for example, last year I did a show called Into the Wild, where my theme was all around cheetah print. Everything that I did on the models and that I styled around was one garment at least had cheetah print on it. And so to answer your question, I really it's very random. Like I did cheetah print one collection, and then another collection I did like fur and minks. And a lot of it does theme to like grown men, grown women, grown person vibes. So I feel like that's the kind of essence that I do bring to the table, so people know to expect in that regard. But I think from an inspiration standpoint, usually it will stem from finding one specific piece out thrifting or out, shopping. And then I'm like, you know what? I want to base my whole vibe around that. And then that's where the getting in your head can start, because you're like, oh, but I have to coincide this with this. And then all these little details we think about. And that's what's so beautiful about being a stylist, is we're thinking of all the little details that you may not think about as a client. But then when you see the photograph and you see that final result, you're like, oh, wow, like she wore this with this. Like I wore white earrings and black with the white and black on the, wait a second. Okay. She's thinking this through, because we are thinking this through. Like nothing we do is on accident. So that's for sure.
What has been your hardest experience, or maybe like lowest point in styling? Not so much from like someone else's standpoint towards you, if that makes sense. So I've had a lot of hardships. What has been your hardship?
I would say when things break or things go wrong, breaking meaning jewelry, or just things go wrong, especially in a runway situation, that's when backups have to happen or quick changes. For example, I'm not like completely satisfied with looks. I think that is discouraging. So other circumstances like with hair and makeup, sometimes that can also be really hard, because as you just said earlier, sometimes my models are not even ready. And, we're hours before not even hour before the show, trying to keep things moving, but there's only so much you can do in those circumstances. You just have to keep it pushing. And so I think just keeping a good face on in runway is definitely the most difficult. Again, like I said, people are looking to me to remain calm. And something that I said, so recently I was in a show where it was a different circumstance. So all of my portfolio, besides this one circumstance, is my own vision. But for this circumstance, I was assisting a designer. Okay. And this happens a lot. It happens a lot in New York Fashion Week and other fashion weeks, where you have stylists that assist designers and create the full vision together. And then the designer, of course, has her pieces or whatnot pair together. Well, in this circumstance, it was very tough on me because, I had to support her vision 100%, which I did and respectfully did. But something that I said to all the models before bringing them down to the other level to meet the designer is I said, first of all, it's swimwear, as you were very experienced with. Women have different insecurities. They have different things they don't want to wear, right? So it's a whole different ballgame with swimwear. And something I said to the models was, any stress you have in the next 4 or 5 hours, you come to me. And I was very serious with that, because I didn't want to stress out the designer. And that's something that I took on heavily during that show, and it was very stressful, and it was very much burning out for me. But the designer had a great experience, and she's like, wow, I feel so good about choices we've made and the decisions we've made with the swimwear, and I'm feeling so good. And I'm like, and I'm over here like, I'm a struggler, right? But she's having a good experience, and that was what my job was at that time. And I think a lot of the time in the industry, you have to let your ego go. You came here to do a job. And I think that's very important. It's very testing in the industry. You have to know when to let the ego go, when to perform. And again, if you don't have the resources to perform, like water or food, that's a different situation. I'm not saying that. I'm saying in situations where, there's only so much you can do. And when you get on that runway or when you're done with that look, you got to keep it pushing. You got to put on that face and you got to keep it pushing. And so I think that's what I've learned and been the most difficult in runway situations like that. And just, it's not my full creative vision. You have to respect it. And that's something that I've learned humbly this year, is what your place is in the role that you have, and just moving forward as best as you can.
I think that's really important because I've, as a model, have seen a lot of designers or stylists butting heads, and it's really kind of awkward for
Yeah.
people fighting, especially when it's already really tense as it is. I think that's really, really important to understand, know that, especially if you're helping someone that sometimes, okay, maybe you're not in love with what they're doing, but it's their kind of thing. I want to talk about your business a little bit. Let's get, actually not a little bit, a lot of it, because it's really big and really important. And I'm sure it feels like your baby. I'm trying to start a business as well. And I feel like I'm trying to make it so perfect because it feels like my baby, literally, that you're starting something. So what was that like going into it, especially during a pandemic? You said this all kind of came into play during this crazy time. What was that experience like?
It was definitely difficult. I mean, when people say they started from nothing, that's really what it was. I created my first logo on Canva, that app. Like I did everything from the ground up, just like anyone else would say to you. Again, people kind of knew me through Goodwill. They kind of knew who I was, but I started a whole separate Instagram. I had more following. Everyone was encouraging me just to use my main account on Instagram to be my styling business. And I said no. And they're like, why? And I'm like, because I want people to make a decision if they want to follow me on my personal and understand my personality and the face behind me. They can do so, but I want them to be able to make the decision and have that separation. So that's first and foremost. I created a whole new Instagram starting at 0 followers, which was really hard, obviously, because you're starting from nothing. And then secondly, one of the hardest barriers, of course, is being safe in a pandemic, and I wasn't working with many people, especially not large groups at all. So being very cautious of that and who I worked with, and, just honestly, just being safe was very important to me. And again, challenging creating looks and being confident in those looks. There's a saying, fake it till you make it. Really, that does come into play sometimes. You're not 100% with the look, but at the time, this is the best you got and this is the clients loving it. You got to keep it pushing. We're, as a creative, we're working against time. And at the end of the day, not everything's going to be perfect. I know, breaks your heart, but it's not going to be perfect. And guess what? Nobody's expecting it to be perfect, because people that are expecting it to be perfect or who are judging you probably have too much time on their hands. I'm going to put that nicely. So really what it comes down to is just starting, launching. People that are going to support you are going to support you. There are going to be people out there that probably are surprisingly not supporting you, and that's okay too. Again, like I said, some of my biggest fans are the strangers that I've met, and that is completely fine. Don't take it personally if people that or your closest aren't supporting you at first. People sometimes need to see that you're doing it and taking it seriously before they actually take you seriously. And so I think the best nugget I can give to someone starting out is taking yourself seriously from the start. Of course, you follow me long enough. I don't take myself seriously at all in most regards. But when it comes to the business, I'm very serious with it. Even from the beginning, 2 months in, people are like, oh, what do you do? I'm a fashion stylist. They're like, you have to speak that out. I'm a professional model. I'm this. You have to speak that out. I'm a professional fashion stylist. And even though I had 100 followers, I'm still saying this. I'm still speaking this because I'm confident and I'm carrying myself very professionally when I'm working with clients. This wasn't a hobby to me. It never has been. So you have to carry yourself that this is a business. And then what naturally happens is when you take yourself this way and you carry yourself this way, people start taking you this way and they start treating you professionally and taking you the same way, because they see, wow, she is her biggest fan and she's really taking this, professionally. And then people start acting that way towards you. So I think that's really something important to take away, is being professional will get you so far when it comes to having a business. And if you need help in how to do this, ask for help. There's so many people out there that are probably willing to help you, or learn, read about things, or have someone on your team that wants to do the business stuff if you don't want to. There's nothing wrong with understanding where you have the weaknesses and hiring that out. That's something else. At first, as a business owner, you're wearing all the hats, all the hats. You're an admin, you're the guest speaker, you're all these things. But at the end of the day, it's okay to hire out or to have somebody help you out along the way.
I think faking it till you make it is like, I say that all the time, because when I first started, I'm not sure if you know like my very first experience, but I just applied to New York Fashion Week. I was like, why not? I'd never modeled before, didn't know anything. I was like, what's
Wow.
they could say no, and I'm not modeling anyway, so there's nothing. I can only gain from that experience, whether or not I get in. Somehow I got in with my walk. I don't know how, because I didn't know what I was doing, but I think I was just confident, and I just kind of made it seem like I knew what I was doing. And when I got there, I had no idea what I was doing at all, but I was just kind of scanning the room, watching what everyone else was doing. I was like, okay, I'm going to act really professional. I'm going to pretend like I've done this 20 times. And that's really what has led my career to where I am now, because I think if I would have went in there, intimidated, scared, I think people would have not taken me seriously, or,
Right.
people walk all over you, especially in this industry. I would say, I'm sure you've probably had some experiences with that. And I think if you're not confident, there's a difference between being confident and being cocky. I always tell my students that
100%.
don't be cocky. When you walk into a room, make sure people see that you're there and that you're showing up, but never be cocky. And I think that that's really important, being confident, because it does take you a far way, because especially like I said, if I didn't walk in there confident, I don't know what my experience would have been. And I probably would have just freaked out, because it's a really scary, a really scary thing to do. 100% agree with that. So back with your business, what has been the most challenging thing to kind of navigate, and what has been the best thing to navigate?
Actually, what you just said with the most challenging, it brought it up while you were speaking. Think about it from like just being a person that gets ready every morning and creates looks, right? So when I first started as a stylist, the biggest fault that I had and the biggest barrier that I learned was, after finishing a look, asking like, what do you think? Or if a model or a person, like it depends on the situation, right? But usually, let's say it's a fashion show, for example, I want my models to be comfortable, but also I would need to be confident in the look that I'm putting on. So there are certain circumstances where it's like, oh, I don't really like this necklace. Well, that's my vision. Okay to be silent, me being silent, because what I used to do when I first started was, I don't know if I like the earrings. I don't know if like I'm talking to myself, but you have to realize that the model or the client is hearing you questioning yourself.
Right.
So it would be almost like a model, like on the runway being like, I don't know if I'm liking my walk like this. Like, was that okay? Did I look okay? Was I fierce enough? Like, no, like you could be thinking those thoughts, but you need to think those thoughts in your head. And so something that I learned was the hardest barrier was having those thoughts in my head and being quiet at times and being okay with that. There have been circumstances where I'm quiet, I'm looking back at the look and I'm kind of deciding on how I'm feeling. And the model said, like, what do you think? Like they're asking me, I'm like, I'm just thinking, you got to hold it back. You have to think, because again, in my head, I'm like, oh man, I hate that necklace. The vibe doesn't go with this. I'm thinking of all these things, but I'm a professional. So I need to learn to take those thoughts and put them in my head. And when you get nervous though, you naturally do that, right? You're talking out loud. My brain's going a million miles a minute. I've learned over time to be quiet in my head. And I hope this makes sense because I'm trying to explain it. Be quiet in your head and just be confident in what you actually say. Nope, I'm loving this look, or am I good? You're good. And you have to be confident, because as a model and as a stylist, we can both relate. When you're not confident, people sense that, and they're going to walk on you. Like you said, they're going to walk on you. Oh, yeah, I don't really like this like earring. Like, can we switch it? No, that's we're good. You're good. Like you gotta be stern sometimes. This is a whole nother topic, but as a woman, you got to be stern sometimes, and that could be taken wrong, and that's okay. I don't care. You got to, keep it pushing. The hardest lesson I've learned is learning how to talk to myself in my head during a situation like that, and just being confident on what I'm speaking when, I'm working with a client or working in a rush situation. And again, sometimes I'm just not fully satisfied with the look, but again, we're working against time and we got to keep it moving. That's more runway, right? If it's like a one-on-one clientele situation, that's not the same. It's more runway situations where I'm throwing things on, or people are asking me last minute, hey, can you style this person? I'm like, okay, so then I'm like not sure, and I don't have all the jewelry that I thought I would have, and so there are circumstances like that. But definitely the best thing about being a stylist is the way that my clients and that my models react when they have the look on, honey. They transform. I just love that confidence that comes out of them when they have the look on, how fierce they feel. And it's so awesome to just see the reactions on their faces and like see their vibe switch, and they're just so happy. And again, it matters to me for them to be happy with their look. I never want to be in a situation where they're uncomfortable with their look. I always describe this story and how I operate. But I had a situation where I styled like a black and white striped blazer with like a cheetah belt. It was obscure, okay, which sometimes my styling can be obscure, it can be out there. And the model walked out and I could just tell something was off. I could just tell there was something about the look she just wasn't feeling. But again, you feel as a model, sometimes you feel like you're offending us, but really for me, you're not. Like, I want to understand what's going on, right? And I could pick up on that. So I asked her, I said, what's wrong? And she's like, oh, good. I'm like, what do you not like about the look? She's like, oh, no, I like it. I'm like, just be honest with me because I can make a switch. It doesn't matter to me that much. Like, don't like take looks to heart. That's the best advice I can give getting into styling, because necklaces break, belts snap, blazers get stains. Like, you have to have backups in your brain or just be able to roll with the punches, right? And finally, she admitted she didn't like how, the pattern was coinciding, like with the cheetah and the stripe. So I switched her belt to black and she was feeling herself. She was all these things. And I'm like, see, like, I didn't say see to her, but in my head, I'm like, see, like, that's really all it took. Like, just a small change. And I'm okay. I still love the look just as much. And I love it more now because she's happy. I think that's what's so fulfilling, is seeing the reactions of my clients, and obviously the end result, seeing the photos come out, is just so awesome, because I'm like, oh, I did that. So it's just really fun to see that too.
Where do you see your brand in the next 5 years? Where do you want to be?
I definitely want to do like a major runway like New York or Paris or London. Even if it's assisting a designer, like I chose to do that experience here in Arizona first because I knew I possibly would do that in the future with a major designer. So getting that experience is really important to me from the start. So I definitely want to do a high profile runway like that, because I haven't done one out of state. I've just done a ton in state, which Arizona is filled with fashion. So I'm very lucky in that regard to have the career that I do here. Definitely branching out is very important to me. And also, I really see myself working with celebrity clients one-on-one, like being a personal stylist. I see my brand going more that direction because I feel most fulfilled with being on a one-on-one basis with my clients. And my goal is really to just be a stylist for a personal celebrity, or just on retainer. You see that all the time in the industry, as you may know, like with celebrities, they have that go-to stylist, they have that go-to MUA, go-to hairstylist. And once they like you, you're with them for life. You're traveling with them. They're like, I don't even know what I'm going to wear for breakfast tomorrow morning. Colleen, like, they have that trust in you so much. It's very, very empowering, but also it can be very stressful when you have clients that, they're paying high ticket. And, even if you haven't done something before, you're going to act like you have. That's for sure. And there have been situations I've done that before, and they've been for very high paying clients, but that pressure is on, but you're built for it. You have to remind yourself you're built for the pressure. They wouldn't have hired you if they didn't think you could perform. And that's the thrill of it. That's what I love the most. But that's where I see my brand going, definitely into the personal realm of styling. And then also like building out my brand, because I have a whole brand. It's called Everything CQ. If you notice, I have Style by CQ. I also have CQ Petites, which I know we've talked about a long time ago. Still something in the works, but something I didn't expand a lot in the pandemic because of obvious reasons. But I see myself going that route, petite fashion as well. And just I love talking to people. Maybe you can tell. I love talking to people. I love being motivational. And I see my brand also expanding to that, more of like a full operating operation, just having all these different avenues, inspiring people to pursue their dreams, pursue what they're passionate about. I see my brand going that way. And then lastly, I definitely see myself having a published book in the next 5 years or less. It's something I talked about a lot, but I haven't fully achieved yet. So I see myself having a book of some regard, because a lot of what people don't know is I've also worked in corporate America for 7+ years. And so on top of me having a business, I also worked in that industry as well. So I've been juggling both for a very long time, but I've used that juggle and that learned through corporate to my advantage in my business. And so I think a lot of what I'll be writing about in the book is that exactly. Like, it's okay to want to work in corporate or use that degree you have to get that salary, to get the things that you need to invest in your business. That is okay. I have a lot of nice things because I've worked in corporate and I've had that experience, and I've traveled for free, and I've done all these things because I've gotten to the niche that I want to, which is marketing. And so it all plays in together. It's all pillars, and it's all about learning. And so I think that's part of what I want to teach and like inspire people to do is, everything's a stepping stone. So if you think that, oh man, I should be here right now, especially with social media, I'm telling you what, you're farther than most people if you're even thinking like that, right? And I've always been that way. Even in my early 20s, I was like, I'm going to be a business owner. That I started Smile Like Colleen with that intention back in that day. And it's been almost 7 years now. And now it's finally blossoming. Right. And so that's what people never see. They're like, oh, she was an overnight success. Well, maybe 8 years in the making, because I've been wanting to be this way forever. And if you look back at like really successful people, usually they're very similar in like years like past, like their demeanor and things is very similar because they already believed in themselves, but they just haven't had the benefits yet. And so like if you look at old videos of me and like when I was in my early 20s, I'm like, hi everyone, I'm Colleen, like I'm the same. And it's so crazy. Like I look back at those videos, I've grown so much since then. There's still little pieces of CQ in there that have always lied with me. And that's what I always say is like, find what like you're great at and what people like love you for, and just roll with it, whatever that looks like for you.
Were you nervous to first start to grow your brand and grow your account? Because like you said, you started kind of in your early 20s to really start to grow your image. And I think I can kind of relate to that because when I was in high school, I was trying to become not an influencer, but like I wanted to start to model. That's what I wanted to do. And everyone in my school was laughing at me. Like they thought it was the funniest thing. People were making fun of me. They're like, look how tall you are. You're never going to model. No, I'm going to. And I would post like modeling type photos to try and see if someone would see it, and I would tag all these brands, and everyone in school I just remember would make fun of me like, why is she tagging them, she's never going to make it. And that's when I walked to New York Fashion Week, and I was like, you see, if I would have listened to them, I would have never got to where I am today, and I would have stopped right then and there, and I don't know where I would be or what I would be doing. How did you overcome that? Because I'm sure maybe you were a bit nervous at first, because I know I was, definitely, especially with the backlash that I was getting. So how did you deal with that?
In high school, I always say this in my interviews, and it's funny because people always roll their eyes. But like when I was in middle school and early like high school, like I was not like a pretty girl. I wasn't popular. I was the nerd. I was in theater. I was in sports. Like I had a whole different friend groups. I wasn't part of one group or cared really like in that regard. And so in my 20s is really when I started blossoming, you could say, physically. But because I was that way at the beginning of my early years in high school and teenage years, I really developed my personality and like who I was very organically because I wasn't focused on being a certain image. But something that's funny is as a junior and senior, people, I don't know if anyone's going to watch this interview from high school. There's still some people that follow me, but we'll see. They can, I guess, attest. I wore business wear every single day. Like I was wearing business skirts and business like jackets, and people were like, why are you wearing that? Like, this is high school. Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm dressing for my future self. I used to say that all the time. And I think that's like where I grew like my confidence, because I did get made fun of. The people were like, why are you wearing that? Like people were not kind. And I was like, you know what? I don't care. And then as I got into my early 20s, like building my brand more and more, it was interesting because the hardest I tried to resist like my personality, the harder it became. And so I don't know where it clicked. I want to say like it was early, it was like mid 20s, but maybe it was before. I just was like, I'm myself regardless on social media. And I feel like that's why also people hire me, because my personality you see like across the screen is who I am. Like I 100% am myself at all times. I never switch up who I am or how I act in different situations. So that was really powerful for me, is to realize like, hey, like being who you are, you're always going to attract the people that are for you. And that's why I say, like, when it comes to fashion, like you might get made fun of, like, or a lot of the time, people that have their own barriers in front of them, they will put barriers on you. And that happened a lot. And it happened a lot in my early 20s as well, because I had my mom used to be like, she used to have her own interior design business. So thankfully, I had one business owner in my family, but really, most of my family didn't have businesses. Like everyone worked 9 to 5s, everyone did the traditional way. I didn't have a creative family like that. Like I didn't have siblings that were similar to me or anything like that. So when I started saying I wanted to be a business owner, it was like, stop living in the clouds, get a job, go to school, just stop living in the clouds. I'm like, okay. And it's similar to you. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
But I knew deep down I'm meant to do this. I'm built to do this. I'm built for so much. And I knew that. And so sometimes, like I said, you will not have support, but you have to believe in yourself. Because if you're holding your regard towards what other people think of you, you're never going to get far. You have to be your first supporter, your biggest supporter. And even when on Style by CQ, my brand, even when I was getting one view on my story, nobody was supporting me. I was the only one liking my stuff. I was still doing it and I was still posting. And that's really what it came down to. And that's how I blew up so quickly, people would say, was because I didn't stop like most people do. I just kept going and cranking out the looks and I just never stopped. And people were like, wow, like you've been doing a lot. I'm like, yeah, like, and there are days I'm tired. I don't want to do this look. I want to reschedule. I still do it. Keep it pushing. It's good to take breaks. I definitely believe in taking breaks. I'm not like go crazy, but at the same token, you have to sometimes do things when you don't want to do them. And I did that a lot at the early stages of my business and the early stages of my brand was what's the point of posting this picture? What's the point of posting it and tagging Goodwill? But over time, they recognized me and what ended up basically me introducing myself. And I don't know about you, but networking events, it's like a love and hate relationship. Like I like going, but me getting there mentally to go is like always like, right?
Yeah.
So there was an event with Goodwill and it was like in person. This is before pandemic. And I was like, oh, I want them to notice me because I've been tagging them. And I was like, I want them to notice me, right? I wore this over the top outfit naturally to try to stand out. And then I came with questions. Like there was an interview panel. I wasn't on it or anything at the time. I was just an audience member and I asked questions. Like I wanted them to notice me and they did. And that was scary. I went alone. I didn't know anyone. I did that a lot in my early stages. I went alone to a lot of things because I didn't have, like I said, I didn't have a creative support. I was just going on my own. That's how it actually happened. So there's no secret sauce. It was just really convincing yourself most nights, especially because I'm working at 9 to 5 at this time as well, to do these things and just, put on a face. If you want this, you're gonna have to work hard for it. That's what I always kept telling myself.
And I think a lot of people just assume that it happens so quick, like you said before, and it really doesn't. You were doing all this stuff on top of working a 9 to 5. So you would get home exhausted, I'm sure, because
Yeah.
I even do other work. I don't just model. So I think a lot of people think that that's what models do. And especially in your 20s, I suggest people to work as hard as you can, make all the money that you can make, work with all the people that you can work with, put your foot in all these different doors. You don't know what will happen.
Yep.
And for me, I know yes, I might be tired, or yes, I might be this and that, but I kind of want to overwork myself because I'm still I just turned 21 and I want to do all this stuff so that I can really, when I get to that age where I start my business, because right now I know that I'm not going to start it right this very second because I kind of know what I need to put into it and I still need to finish school and all this stuff. But
Right.
when I get there, then I will have the funds to do it because I'm not only modeled, I've worked and I've been able to take other people's criticism. I think that's also helped. I think it helps to work for
Yes.
someone else to understand when you work for yourself, kind of how things run. And I'm sure you've learned that through working in corporate America, obviously. I think it is important to see how other businesses are, how are they flourishing? How are they failing? How can I incorporate that in my business. So I think it is really important to work for someone else in the beginning too, so that you don't make those same mistakes that you've seen someone else kind of make on their own dime. I know it sounds bad, but it is true. I can also really relate to your story with dressing up to like go to school. That's what I used to do. That's really where the bullying started for me. I would wear a purse, I would wear some booty heels because I'm 4'11", and so I tried to make myself a little bit taller. And people were like, I kid you not, this is a tweet. These girls would make fun of me, and they used to be my friends in high school. They were like, this is not a runway show, this is high school. Like, stop bringing your purse, stop wearing booty heels. And I put that video next to my my runway clip, and I was like, but I made it my runway. And now see, people in my high school are DMing me now asking, how do I get started? I was like, I'm not helping you. You used to be mean to me. Maybe I would have helped you if you were, nice and supportive, just like anyone should be. I feel like if someone has a dream, who is anyone to kind of belittle them, right?
Exactly.
And I think it's really funny how people kind of come up when they see you coming up and they're, well, how do I do that? How do I do this? Well, maybe if you weren't mean in the beginning, I would help you out. But I could definitely relate to you in that sense of just doing what you want to do because you're doing something. You said you wanted to dress like a businesswoman because you saw this in your future. And that's what you did. And I feel the same. That's what I was doing because I knew what I wanted to do and I had to act the part. That's what I would always say. I'm acting the part because I'm not there yet, but I will be one day. And so I think that's really powerful.
Yep, really is. And I won't get into spiritual stuff, but like manifestation, I mean, that's just really what it comes down to. It's just like you really did like speak that into existence. And I, even in my early 20s, I had like a couple girlfriends that were like into fashion and I really wasn't. And they used to like make fun of what I wore and stuff. And I look back now and I'm like, yeah, okay. But it's like, I didn't think I had it what it takes because again, your community is so powerful. The people you surround yourself with, if they're not talking life into you and talking inspiration into you, they're not your circle. They're actually low-key haters. And I found that out the hard way through a lot of my relationships because most people want you to achieve to a limit until you're passing them and then it's a problem. And so I just don't agree with that. I think I think there's space for everyone to succeed and for everyone to be their best selves and their highest selves. And we're better together. I know that sounds cheesy, but it's just so true. Like there's no room to like, I say this all the time because there's a lot of stylists in Arizona and maybe one person would rather work with someone else versus myself and vice versa. And I don't take anything personal because it's just what we're, and like you cannot take things personal as a business owner. You have to keep it pushing because there is a crowd that you're going to attract and that you're going to work with, and those are your people. And same with those girls. I mean, again, like people like that, like they don't get far because their character shows. And I have had the same situation with people from my past of reaching out and I'm like, you're just not a good person or character back then. So I really don't feel like that's changed much now. Or like, hey, like how you been? Those are my cringiest ones. I'm like, I don't even answer them anymore. I don't even take the time because honestly, like, how I've been. That's why you're asking the question. And we're both only going to get more successful. And that's going to be harder and harder on a larger scale, of course. But it's what comes with reality of being successful in any regard. People are going to have this animosity or could be jealousy towards you, and you just have to keep it pushing. And I don't agree with it, but you just kind of have to keep it pushing regardless. But it's very motivational too, because it really shows, like, I think the hard workers always win and the genuinely great people always win also. And that's what I strive to always be, is those two things.
I think the same exact way. We're really similar in a lot of ways. I always say it really does motivate me as well. I kind of like, I don't know, it's really weird, but when people are especially really bad, like some of my TikToks, if you scroll through, they're awful. Like
I've heard stories about TikToks being that way.
Oh my gosh. I mean, not even just TikTok, but TikTok like specifically. I feel like that's really how my account started growing because as soon as I would put my height, if I would just post a runway video, no one would say anything rude. The second I put 4'11", this is meant for the tall girls. You're taking something away from the tall girls. I'm like, I'm not taking away anything from anyone.
No.
I feel like when people are hating on you, you're doing something right.
Correct.
They wouldn't take the time out of their day to, I don't know, it's just some weird thing. I feel motivated by it as well, which I guess it's the best way to take it, because if I took it to heart, I would stop posting TikToks. But obviously, you can't. And you have to be your biggest supporter, because at the end of the day, like you were saying, some of your best friends, like the girl that was commenting all that stuff in my high school, she was my best friend doing this to me. Not my best friend anymore, obviously. But
Right.
you have to be your biggest supporter, because at the end of the
Mhm.
day, yourself and show up for yourself. So I agree with that.
And it's a hard pill to swallow, because I think where some people do stop is where they feel like they're intimidating the people that they've been so close to or that they care about, or these people that you are close to are reacting in these ways. So you feel, okay, maybe I'm stop do this. But really, you're discrediting yourself and who you are as a person by pulling back or graying out who you are. And that's in any regard. I'm not trying to get preachy, but that's in any regard. That's personal, romantic relationships, friendships. If you feel like you are a lesser version of yourself in those relationships, whatever they are, the person isn't for you. And that's a hard reality to hear, but it's truth. And there are going to be, as I said, there are going to be a tribe that rocks with you. There's going to be a lot of people that probably don't. And I know there's probably people out there that don't like me as well. And that's okay. And that irritates people because I really don't care. That's what's so irritating to them, is I really don't care. And even like I dealt with a brand situation last year when there was people trying to like make me have a bad relationship with a brand, even though I've had a good relationship. And the brand came back to me and was like, of course we're going to work with you. Like, they're just hating on you. And I'm like, okay, like you said, now I know I'm doing something right, because people are trying to wreck my reputation for no reason. And again, when I'm the same person in all regards, then there's really nothing to wreck, because I'm always true to who I am. That will get you so far. It's just being a genuine person and being true to who you are, and realizing there's always going to be haters, and realizing, especially when you start selling something or having a business, like those people that you thought were going to support you probably won't, or there's a lot that won't. Some will, of course, but they're going to be people you surprisingly that were like, yeah, I got you. And then crickets. That's just the reality of what happens. That's okay, because again, that's just the universe doing its job, or whatever you have belief system wise. That's, God doing his job, whatever, and giving your actual circle that you want to fruition and to be like what it is today. And I'm so genuinely grateful for the support system I have today. But I created that support system, right? I made decisions that were tough in order for me to have my best success and my best life. So you just really have to make hard decisions as a business owner. You have to.
Just want to touch on one last thing. What is your biggest piece of advice that you would give? I would say really any age group, because there's a lot of people who are starting really young now. So really any age group who want to get into styling.
Just start.
Yeah.
I know I've said it. Definitely just start on other people. Like I said, that is the thing that really shifted my professionalism and my gear as a stylist. And don't doubt yourself. I know how hard it is to doubt yourself and doubt the looks that you put together, and people saying, oh, I could have put that look. You didn't though. So that's what it comes down. I'm sorry, but that's just crazy to me. I really just, you have to stick up for yourself. Again, that's why, like, even though like you might not be super happy with something you put on your portfolio or that you publish, like I still have work, and I keep all my work on my Instagram, on my portfolio, and on my website, just to show my growth. I don't like the beginning of my stages of styling. I don't like my work really, but you just have to keep going and keep working and keep creating looks. And I know how hard that could seem at times, especially because you feel like everyone's doing the same thing. Don't be afraid to be different, because again, even if someone states that they can do what you do, guess what? They didn't. And guess what? You believed in yourself, and guess what? You didn't stop. And that can go very far, because there's many people out there that say they're going to do something and don't. And that is what set me apart, is when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm very true to my word. And you have to be your biggest fan. Like we said, you have to be. And that means in any regard, when there's haters, when there's not, when there's people supporting you, when there's not, when there's late nights and no one's watching you, when there's not, like, you have to be there for yourself at all times, and just recognize the end result, which is just having a great finished product for whatever the look is that you're achieving. And again, lastly, just trying to curate that circle. I know it's very hard at the beginning to have a circle that believes in you, but like I said, there is someone out there that's going to like what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Might not be your friend, not be your family, might not be your boyfriend, might be your girlfriend, might not be your significant other in general, but it's going to be somebody rocks with you. I promise. In this world of social media, somebody's going to rock with you, and it might be your most surprising person. And it's, like I said, some of the OGs that have followed me for so long, they're not people that I'm close to. They're just OGs that literally have just followed my journey from step 1 to step 7, or step 60. They've been there through everything. And it's okay to explain your journey and to admit like you're not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is so important, is to just humble yourself. The biggest advice and tip of the night is just start, because you can think for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, I have this idea. And the problem is that person that you were 4 years ago is not that person you are today. And then you're starting from a different point, which is fine. But there's a reason why you have that idea, and there's a reason why you need to execute it. So I just say, just start. Who cares what anyone thinks? I know it's harder said than done, especially as you're in your younger stages. But I promise you, there's so much beauty in not caring and to just being your biggest fan. So highly support it. And I will follow you. Any person on any platform that's watching this, if they hear this and like, I got you, I will follow you. I'll support you. I'll be your one like. I do not care. I will support you. So just start. I promise you.
Couldn't agree more. I always say I don't want to be 70 and thinking, well, what if I did that? I don't want that. I want to know that I did it, and maybe, maybe it didn't work, but I tried. So
exactly.
That's the best thing. So where can everyone find you?
I'm on TikTok at Smile Like Colleen. I'm not a big TikTok person. Maybe you guys will follow me, maybe I'll get on more. And then on Instagram, my main Instagram is at Smile Like Colleen. And my styling Instagram is at styled by CQ. That's how you can find me. And then my website is everythingcq.com. The link in my Smile by Like Colleen bio is my brand new website. So follow that link. And right now I'm offering like a holiday collection, which is limited, that I'm actually selling some of my thrifted items that are one of a kind. Full website. You can find all the publications I've been in magazine wise. You can find all the interviews I've ever done, a bunch of things you could stalk me about. So feel free to stalk all you want, and let me know if you have any questions.
I think it's so important to have professionals come in and talk about, how do you do this? And especially if I was younger, I would love to have had something like this. So I definitely think it's important to help people who are coming into what we have experienced already. So thank you so much. You were the first person that came to mind.
Yeah, it's so powerful to just hear people talk about their experience, and if you can relate in any way, like realize, oh man, I guess I'm not the only one that like has this thought. Like it's so powerful to be able to relate and like just realize like you're giving that resource to someone that's inspiring someone right now. So that's so powerful.